Hey, Archit.
Oh, sorry, I was muted.
No worries. We'll just let everyone join and then we'll probably give it a minute for people to trickle in.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good.
I'm excited. I heard we have about 600 and more RSVPs.
Got a lot of people here. Looks like they're all starting to trickle in. Are you two able to see the chat as well?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I
Wow.
can see
Hi,
it.
everyone.
Yeah.
This is so cool.
We will really kick things off in about 3 minutes. We'll just kind of let people trickle in here. But I love seeing where everyone is from. Ooh, lots of people from New York. Got some people from LA, Toronto, DC. So, and thank you so much. We will let panelists join in and we'll get started here in just a minute.
Hey, Sarah, I think you're on.
Here I am talking on mute. Thank you so much. Alrighty, it is 3 Pacific time, and I know you all are dialing in from all over the place. It is so good to see everyone here. Thank you so much for coming to Talent Boards, Envisioning Your Future. We're super excited to chat with some new grad panelists and just give you some insight and information onto lots of different companies and just some great tips as you head into this fall recruiting season. So thank you for joining. My name is Sarah, and I'll be facilitating this conversation today. But before we get started, I've loved seeing everybody's location. So keep dropping that in the chat if you are just joining us. Also, feel free to drop in your favorite DoorDash or Uber Eats order. We love seeing what everybody loves. I've got my drink with me here today. Just how you keep cool over the summer. And then I said this a few minutes ago, but just wanted to reiterate, if you look at your screen on the right-hand side, there are kind of 3 tabs at the very top: event, my agenda, and session. And so we're over in the session column. And then from there, there's a chat, a poll, and a Q&A tab. So right now we're all in the chat, dropping our locations, our favorite DoorDash order, but you can also head over to polls. We've got some polls up. We'd love to hear you all. And then we've got the Q&A box. So as we move through our discussion today, we want to hear from you. Like, this is an interactive time, and we want to provide the information that is most valuable to you. So drop your questions in the Q&A. We've got some questions already loaded, but we want to hear what you all want to know. Let's see. We will have our speakers up here. So they will have their video and audio. So hold off on sharing yours. But at the end, we will open it up for Q&A. So you're welcome to put your questions in that Q&A chat, or you can come off video or come on video off mute and join us up on stage at the end. Because this is supposed to be interactive. So we want that. We'd love for you guys to get up here and chat with us. Also, all of our sessions are recorded and they will be sent out after the event. So, if you're taking notes or just want to be engaged, either's fine. We'll have this for you afterwards. But before we dive in, I would love to introduce our amazing companies today and just walk through a little slideshow of some high-level information, just highlighting when they'll be kicking off the recruiting season, what roles they'll be hiring, all that good stuff that we know you want to know. So let's just take a look at a few of the companies that are here with us today. We're super excited to have Airbnb, Dropbox, and Gem with us. I know they've got some great roles coming up. So I'll let you guys read over this for a second. And then we are also excited to have Okta, Rippling, and Zwift with us as well. And one thing that I just wanted to highlight is, as you can see, from when recruiting kicks off, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. We've got some companies that are up and running, other companies that are going to be posting later into this fall. And I know historically some companies wait until even later in the fall. So there's no right or wrong answer. We love providing this for you all to have a little bit of insight into when you can expect to see things drop. Just to show these again, but don't worry if things aren't open today. They will. People are still hiring, and you guys are going to see that. But we are here to help you make the most of your hiring season. So I am going to jump into introducing our panelists. Awesome. So let's meet our new grads. And if you all could start off with your name, your company, and your favorite DoorDash or Uber Eats order, that would be awesome. And Michelle, we'll go ahead and start with you if you want to kick us off.
Yeah, Sarah. Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle. I'm a software engineer at Gem, and my go-to DoorDash order is definitely it's between a couple of things. I was going to say poke because there's meat and vegetables in it, But then someone in the chat said chicken tikka masala, so I think that's like a very, very close second, if not like either one.
That's very fair, very fair. No, good orders. Thank you. Archit, we'll kick it over to you.
Hey everyone, my name's Archit. I'm a software engineer at Rippling, and I'd say my favorite DoorDash order, my favorite cuisine is Mexican, and I love trying like any like local places. So just like local Mexican cuisine is my favorite DoorDash.
Awesome. I'm always looking for those little hole in the wall places. Awesome. Jane, we'll kick it over to you next.
Hi, everyone. I am Jane, and I am a software engineer at Okta. I don't use DoorDash too much because I'm trying to cook more these days. But I would say there's a really good crab fried rice dish at this local Thai restaurant near me. So I would go for that.
That sounds delicious. I bet everyone on the East Coast is ready for dinner right now with all this talk of food. All right, Giovanni, we'll kick it over to you.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Gio. I'm a software engineer at Zwift, and my go-to is probably some Chinese food.
Very solid, very solid. And last but not least, Alexander, we'll wrap up here with you.
Thanks, Sarah. Hi, everyone. My name is Alexander. I'm a software engineer at Dropbox, and I'd say that my go-to order is Indian food. There's an amazing restaurant just a couple blocks away called Zareen's that if you ever get the chance to visit or hang out in the Bay Area, would definitely recommend you head it up.
Ooh, I love having all those local recommendations. I think my favorite is Indian food too. Well, thank you so much. We're really excited to have you all here. We're going to go ahead and dive into the panel. We've got some great questions, and we're going to start off with just like the basics of fall recruiting and interviewing. So, Michelle, we're going to start off with you again. With fall recruiting, with fall on-campus recruiting quickly approaching, can you share what methods you used to get an internship or full-time job last time? What, like, especially virtually, what does it look like as many companies will continue to engage virtually this fall?
Yeah, so there's a couple of methods that I used the last time I was looking for internships. The first one was just cold emailing. Honestly, I went on, I would say dozens of different companies' websites, and on their jobs page, they would often have like an email. And I prepared a template kind of introducing myself and kind of sharing what I'm looking for in an internship. And that actually worked for me. Not in my most recent internship with GEM, but the internship before that, actually, I got a response to my cold email. So I just wanted to call that out because it surprisingly worked. The second thing that I did was just apply to as many applications as I possibly could through my school's employment portal. There's usually a limit to how many internships you can apply for, but it's important to like hit that limit if you can, because that'll give you the highest chances of getting interviews and then eventually getting hired for internships.
Thank you. No, I really appreciate that insight. And Gio, I think you had some great thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So like Michelle said, I think the most important thing is to just apply as much as you can. Most large companies use automated systems to filter out applications these days. So it's basically just a numbers game until you get the interview. And then among other things, I personally used a service called Ripple Match. I don't know if anyone's heard of it. And it basically just finds jobs it thinks you'll be a good fit for, and then it helps you through the application process. And I used it to send out a lot of job applications. And among the interviews I got was Zwift, which is where I now work.
It's really exciting. No, big fans of Ripple Match, and there's so many great resources to take advantage of. I think that's part of why we want to get you guys up here and talking and knowing what career services can do for you and how you can leverage it, or these other companies or groups out there that are working for you to help connect you with the right opportunities. Thank you. Well, Archit, we're going to swing over to you. How did you navigate getting to know organizations virtually this past year?
Yeah, so I definitely, my go-to resource was like career fairs at schools and other events that we had. But I feel like there's always going to be companies that are difficult to reach in that sense, where like they might not have like any like in-person events or like even like Zoom events that you can like reach out to them. So my strategy there was like, even if I was like remotely interested in like a company, I would go ahead, do some like research about it and apply. Because usually with like a lot of companies, prior to like the technical interview process, they'll schedule like a 15-minute like recruiter phone call. And I learned to like really like take advantage of those like 15-minute phone calls to go ahead and like learn as much as I could about the company, see if it's a good fit for me. Um, and like just, any other questions I had, I would go ahead and ask them then.
What were maybe some of the things that you found when you were researching or looking on career sites that were really valuable to helping you like get to know more about a company?
Sorry, could you repeat that, please?
Oh yeah, like when you were doing some of the research that you talked about, what was maybe some of the information or where did you look on a company's site to find some of that valuable information?
Mhm. Yeah, so like the first place was definitely just like the job description. So I would see like usually with like a lot of new grad programs, like they tend to have like pretty like generic requirements, and then like they do like team matching for you. But in addition to that, I would look at like the culture of a company. I would like Google, maybe like find like LinkedIn employees, see what like they think about the company as well. Uh, and like the best resource was definitely like other new grads, like recent new grads who had joined, because like they'd gone through the process like just like not that long ago, so they knew the most about that
Oh
stuff.
yeah. Oh yeah. Good insight there. I'll open it up to if any of you others want to jump in at any point in time, feel free to. But we will like go ahead and let's talk a little bit more about interviewing, and let's hear about how you all prepped for interviewing. Maybe Alexander, we'll start with you.
Yes, different strategies that you can take. I found the two that were most helpful for me were to take a class if your university offers one. When I was, I think, a sophomore, I ended up taking a class that was all about, how do you do well? What should you expect? How do you handle different types of interviews? Lots of mock interviews, giving you tips on what to say when you're stuck, which is a very useful skill to build up. And as sort of a corollary to that, you should definitely prep with your friends. Chances are you have a couple friends around you who are in a similar program who are also trying to get internships or trying to get new grad positions. If you're taking the same class, you can quiz yourself. Otherwise, there are tons of sample interview questions online, so you can just find some that your friends haven't seen yet and mock interview them or have them mock interview you. Um, Additionally, going closer to new grads, if you happen to be in student organizations that have alumni, you could maybe check with them if they can help you out, set up mock interviews with you as well.
Thank you. Michelle, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, I think Alexander just gave some really, really great advice. So, like, first of all, thank you so much for sharing. But just to add on, I use I used LeetCode and HackerRank. I know most folks on the panel and most folks in the chat probably heard of those, but just in case, wanted to call those out. Um, and also reading about and practicing big O notation, just to the point where you're comfortable kind of talking about it and explaining it. A lot of interviews will often ask about that, and it's something that a lot of like online, specifically algorithm related questions don't really cover sometimes. So just as an aside, would be good to study.
Thank you. I love calling out like the specifics like that, because sometimes you can study and then be like, oh no, what did I miss? And just knowing what all the bases to cover are. Jane, we haven't heard from you yet. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think definitely echoing off of Alexander and Michelle's points about the leak code. I definitely think there's a lot of value in doing leak code, but I also know at a certain point, some of the questions are probably extremely detailed and impractical. I think my short answer is try to use your best judgment, because not all questions are probably that useful. I think you can probably find threads online just kind of talking about like most popular questions and whatnot. But one thing I wanted to highlight pretty importantly about the mock interview aspect, that's probably the best advice I would give as well, because you may understand how to solve a problem, but there's a huge aspect of being able to communicate that with your interviewer. I don't think you can underestimate how important the communication aspect is. I've conducted several interviews for my company, and there's sometimes quite a bit of a disconnect when you're not able to really understand the logic behind your candidate's thought process. Because then possibly, what if they're like, what if they already memorized some solution of some leak code question and they're just spitting it out to you? You know, you want to really understand how you should understand your own thought process to how you're solving a problem and really conveying that to your interviewer. And especially with mock interviews, you're probably whiteboarding or using some online code editor to do this. So being able to talk through each step, being able to go back and forth with your interviewer is really valuable practice.
No, totally. Being able to explain your thought process and even explain it while you're coding or actually walking through a problem is a skill in and of itself, a great thing to practice.
Actually,
Gio, oh yeah, go ahead.
there was one tiny thing I wanted to mention. I would definitely say practice talking about your resume as well, because sometimes people have projects on their resume and then the interviewer will try to go into a bit more detail about it, but then you don't know how to talk about it. So definitely expect that.
No, that's really smart. If it's on your resume, be ready to talk about it. Great tip. Oh, Gio, what about you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm probably going to echo a lot of what's been said already, but yeah, I studied my notes from my data structures and algorithms courses. I did a ton of leak code and HackerRank and stuff like that. And I participated in a few rounds of Google Kickstart, which is one of Google's coding competitions. And then, yeah, like what's been said already, for entry-level software engineering, I'd say the most important thing is to study data structures and algorithms and then do mock interviews, because grinding leak code and doing coding competitions may help you ace some technical interviews, but unless you have a good understanding of the fundamentals that those problems try to test you on, it's not going to be too easy once you actually start working.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from you and Alexander is to really find somebody that you can practice with and just practice in that kind of mock interview environment. It'll go a long way. Well, Archit, anything else that you want to add?
Yeah, so I mean, +1 to everything that's been said so far. I guess like in regards to like the technical interview, one advice that I thought was really useful is like make sure that you're like well-rounded in terms of what you study, because at the start I was kind of just doing like, you know, random like leak code questions, but then I found myself getting like really good at like one topic, like, you know, like linked lists or something like that. But then like when another topic came up, I was like, oh no, I don't know how to do this at all. So there's like this one popular list called the Blind 75. It's supposed to be like, you know, a well-rounded list of like the 75 like most popular questions, with like a little bit from like all like the different categories. So I think that that was really useful for me. In regards to mock interviews, the two platforms that I found useful were interviewing.io and Pramp. Basically with those, you like take turns interviewing someone who's also like, you know, looking to do interviews. So you go ahead and do like, you know, a 30-minute leak code question with them, and then they do one with you. So it's like a good way to practice like, you know, technical communication so that you're ready for that during the interview. And then lastly, like in regards to like, you know, non-technical aspect, I think it would, some really good advice is to prepare like a personal mission statement, or like, you know, like your 30-second like elevator pitch, where like you kind of describe like, you know, some of the projects you've worked on, what you're interested in, and maybe even like, you know, some like non-technical characteristics that are either like unique or like, you know, you consider one of your strengths. So yeah.
No, I love that. And I love that there are resources out there that are already helping facilitate a lot of these things, instead of having to like figure out who am I going to mock interview with. And that's also, just to reiterate what some of them have said, what some of these groups and organizations can help with. Maybe that's a place to find some of these people to practice with, or maybe more resources. Thank you so much. Those were a lot of tips. I know we've been typing like crazy over here to get all those down. Love seeing in the chat, it looks like you guys are sharing some resources and links to things as well. So thank you for that. Well, kind of going back to campus and interacting with recruiters, I know a lot of things have been virtual the last couple of years, but were there some memorable events that you all attended that really helped you connect with employers? Maybe Gio, we'll start with you.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so most people might not have the chance to attend an event like the one I'm going to talk about, but I still think knowing about it is beneficial, and I'll explain why in a second. So every year at my university, my major's honor society puts together an event the evening before the fall career fair. And at this event, attendees get to meet and play games with recruiters in a much more informal setting than a standard career fair. And the goal is to break the ice between the recruiters and the students right before the career fair, which has a number of benefits for everyone who attends. For the students, it's a way to leave a far more memorable impression on the recruiters. And it's a great way to establish rapport and reduce nervousness before the more formal career fair. And yes, job offers have been made at this event in the past, and we get recruiters from all sorts of companies, including some that I never would have imagined would go for something like that. So if your school happens to have an event like this, then great, by all means, I highly encourage you to attend. But even if not, I think that just knowing that this sort of thing is a possibility is valuable. You may be surprised what recruiters would agree to if a student organization asks and is able to sell the benefits well. And so if you happen to lead a student organization or happen to know someone that knows someone, etc., by knowing that this has and continues to be done successfully, I think it's a good thing.
That's so much fun. What kind of games did you guys play?
They're like icebreaker games, so like,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I can't remember any off the top of my head. There was one like where you create a story, like each person says a word or like a sentence in a story, and you keep going like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've played that one before. No, those are fun. Those are fun. I will echo what he said of recruiters want to be creative. We really want to actually get to know you guys and to just spend time like getting to know your backgrounds. And so doesn't, a great way to get information about a company is to go to an info session or one of those kind of talks, but could also be something more informal and run it by a recruiter, see what happens. You never know. Anyone else have any memorable events that they attended last year, or any events that were really helpful in getting to know employers? Maybe I should ask this. Did you guys attend many events?
I can step in and
Yeah.
remove the awkward silence. I guess for my experience, I'm not like a fresh new grad. I graduated in 2020. So a lot of my recruiting was done in person, but I do feel that there are equivalent like online versions now. But a lot of the events I tried to take advantage of were like the big career fairs. A lot of the times I would try to plan beforehand which companies I wanted to specifically talk to, and kind of research their companies a little. A lot of the times when you start talking to a recruiter, if you actually sound like you're interested and you know stuff about the company, they might, I guess like, I think there are sometimes different piles from what I observed. So definitely connecting with the recruiter is super important. And then my university also had several different clubs that just had a lot of meet and greets with companies where the company would come in and talk about all the stuff that they do. Typically, there's like an engineer that's there as well as a recruiter. So that's a really great opportunity since it's in a smaller setting. And then, yeah, I think those two were the main sources of connection.
Thank you. That's great. Well, now that we've kind of talked about interviewing and being on campus, we want to really hear more about your experience. So we'll stay with you, Jane. And how did you prep for your new role, as a new grad?
Yeah, so I returned to Okta as a converted intern. So a lot of it was in the beginning, I would reach out to my manager beforehand and I'd be like, hey, like I'm joining in a few weeks. Is there any material that I should prepare? Okta is like a security identity management company. So I think there are certain security topics that I kind of wanted to brush up on before I started. I might not necessarily work on those things, but it's really good to have context on kind of the overall product that I would be dealing with. So definitely reaching out to your manager beforehand. Hopefully you have that contact. And I think really just mentally preparing myself to be open to learning. That was a huge thing for me because back in college, I had not actually had a computer science background. I switched midway. And I think there were certain insecurities back then. And I would definitely kind of just tell myself again that, when you're a new grad, you honestly don't know that much and it's completely okay. So definitely coming in with an open mindset is the best advice I can honestly give.
Yeah, I think that attitude goes a long way. Michelle, what about you?
Yeah, I was just like nodding because huge +1 to Jane. Definitely having an open mindset for learning is huge coming into any new job. So that's definitely great. I actually had a different experience though, because before every internship that I've had, I also emailed my manager explicitly asking like, what should I read about before starting? And they've all said like, nothing, don't do anything, don't worry about it. But I still like wanted to go into my first day feeling confident. And so something that I did, and reminder, you don't have to do this, but I took on coding projects through extracurriculars because I also didn't study computer science as my major. So I just wanted to basically practice software development during school before the internship started. And so more importantly than any technical skills, I think that helped me build confidence and learn how to manage stress and like bigger scopes of projects before going into both internships and my current new grad role.
Thank you. And Alexander, what about you?
Yeah, similar to Michelle, I emailed my manager before I started asking, what do I need to know before I start? And the answer was nothing. Don't worry, don't stress about it. You'll be fine. But I still found it useful to, brush up on some of the fundamentals. And so I'd ask questions like, what does your team's tech stack look like? What open source frameworks or programming languages do you primarily work within? And I just make sure that, I was refreshed on the basics of these. Another thing that I found super useful when preparing for a new role was to try to schedule some sort of social hour meet and greet with the team that I was about to work for. I did that before one of my internships, was able to, go into the office about a week before I started, just meet the entire team. And I think that helped me break the ice a lot better for the first week of my internship.
That's so much fun. Well, knowing that it sounds like most of you got the answer of, there's nothing you need to do before day one. There's no like books you need to read. Was there something looking back that you wish you knew before day one that you know now? And maybe Alexander, we'll stick with you.
Yeah, let's see. I think not in terms of, technically not knowing or knowing certain parts of how it's like working in your team's code base. I think for people who have never interned before or have never, had a new grad position, I'll say that it's very different working in a code base at a company as opposed to working in code bases when you're doing projects at university. It's just a whole different beast. You're dealing with an entirely different scale and complexity, and it's okay to, you know, not know everything that you're working within. But sort of more related to working from the pandemic, I'm in kind of a unique position in that I was an intern before the pandemic, and I started working full-time during the pandemic. So I sort of got to see both sides of starting at a company from the same coin. I'll call out that it's definitely harder to onboard onto a team virtually. You know, no matter which team or company you end up working for, there's just a lot more friction in reaching out for help. You know, if you have questions, which you have a lot more of in your first weeks at a company, it's a lot harder for you to sort of overcome the friction of reaching out for help whenever you do have a question, as opposed to if you were sitting right next to your mentor and, you know, they were right there and you could just ask them a question. So, you know, a lot of your first couple of weeks is going to be you sort of getting more comfortable with asking questions at a more rapid pace than maybe you think you should. And in general, just take advantage of opportunities to socialize with your team members and onboarding cohort, because first couple of weeks, you kind of set the rhythm for the first 6 months of your internship or your new role.
Thank you. Thank you. Michelle, what about you?
Definitely agree with a lot of what Alexander said. The first 2 weeks do kind of set the pace for weeks and months after that. Yeah, some things that I wish I knew before day one, going back to the theme of no stress, I wish I knew that I wouldn't be expected to write code on day one. That was sort of my goal, both in my new grad role because I was converted from an intern, and when I started the internship at GEM the first time. I thought it would be a race to set up my computer, but that led to issues setting up my computer because I was just rushing through the setup process, trying to get to code as fast as possible. So I would say just take your time, chat with as many people as possible, because like building relationships will ultimately help you a lot more in the long run than jumping into technical tasks right away.
Awesome. And Jane, what about you?
I 100% agree with that. I think for our company, we optimistically hope that they can, or like a new hire, in whether you're an intern or new grad, we have like a super simple task. Maybe it's like removing a comment or something just to get you familiar with the code process. Like optimistically, end of the week, you can get that in, and it's not even a big bummer if you don't, because it's more important to onboard your laptop, your any knowledge about the product that you want to learn. And I don't think I specified earlier, when I actually sent my email to my manager, he also said, don't do anything. So yeah, I think I can honestly only just repeat the fact that it's best to just enter your first day with an open mind. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I don't think anyone really expects someone who joins a company on the first day to know anything at all. You probably don't know much about the company's process. You probably don't know much about the company's product. And this is a great opportunity for you to ask all those questions. And about building relationships, I think I could totally feel certain, I guess, difficulties with the past 2 years. I know connecting with others may not be as easy as perhaps like being in an office and looking over your shoulder and be like, hey, what's your name? How are you doing? Definitely more friction when you're online. So I would say reach out to your teammates, schedule a one-on-one, and really, just like break the ice, get to know them, maybe a little bit more personally, whatever you would feel more comfortable with. Because in the end, these are people that for the time at that company.
Yeah, No, I love that. And you're right. Relationships are so critical as you really start to establish yourself. So with that, I mean, you kind of answered this question, but maybe we'll turn it back over to Alexander. Like, how did you approach building relationships, like knowing that they are so important? Like, how did you approach building those maybe with your team and maybe with other new grads or like peers at your company?
Yeah, so there are a couple different strategies that you can use. Of course, this first one will depend on which company you end up onboarding to, but most companies are pretty similar in that there are often structured activities in the first few weeks of onboarding to let you get to know either your recruiters or your onboarding cohort better. Um, I would also encourage you in, the first couple of days, maybe arrive 5 minutes early to your onboarding meetings, and that gives you some unstructured time just to talk with other people who arrive early, who are probably there for the same reason. Um, Aside from that, there are lots of opportunities, even virtually, to get to know your team or other people at the company better. You can attend social hours if your team has it, or if they don't have it, you can propose it and lead it. You could attend trivia nights. You could do online game sessions or icebreakers. You could try to convince your manager to do icebreakers during stand-up or during the first 5 minutes of retro. That can often be a good way to just slowly get to know your team members a bit better. And yeah, I just want to reiterate the most important part here, which is don't be afraid to take the initiative to organize something yourself. Um, Either for your team or for other members of your onboarding cohort. I'm still chatting weekly with some of the people that I started with even, over a year later.
That's amazing. No, and so exciting just to see how those relationships are going to continue over the years, and continue to like help you in your career continue to grow. Well, let's talk a little bit about this like virtual and hybrid work. With many employers transitioning to virtual or like a hybrid model, how have you managed your work? And again, like continuing to build those relationships, maybe with your manager and your mentor or your team. And Archit, let's kick it over to you.
Mhm. Yeah, so the two biggest insights that I think really helped me with this were that one was that like people like really love talking to new people, especially like new grads. And the second is that people really like talking about things that they've built. Um, so like based on that, if I was ever like, like working and I like, was using like some kind of, tool or like piece of code that like someone else made and I had some questions about it, I didn't like hesitate to set up like, like a 10-15 minute phone call and like reach out to people, like ping them, asking them about this. And I found out that like, 90% of the time, even more than that, they were willing to help. And after that phone call you would have like one more work relationship there. So I thought that that was like a really great way to go about building like new relationships with coworkers. And then the other thing that my company did was we recently had a work from San Francisco event. So everyone in like all the North American engineers were invited to work in San Francisco for 1 week. And I think that was also, a great like, social opportunity because you really got to get a feel of like the work culture. Um, I'm like a virtual employee right now, so I didn't really have a feel of it as well until like that event, and I got to meet all of my coworkers and teammates, and I think that that was a great experience as well.
Thank you. Alexander, you've already talked a lot about like building relationships, but anything maybe specifically for like that long-term virtual and hybrid model that you've found helpful?
Yeah, I want to give a huge +1 to what Arch had said. I mean, none of us need to explain how much different it is to interact with people over Zoom or virtual meetings as opposed to in person. Um, but as to what Archie says, if you're working for a company that's mostly remote and you get the opportunity to go in person and meet your coworkers or meet some other people at the company, definitely take it. If most people at the company are mostly working remotely, you'll just feel this huge boost of energy as you go in and interact with people in person, which is also really powerful for building relationships and growing stronger with the people that are on your team or elsewhere at the company. I'll also just echo in terms of, you doing your work and building new connections. It can definitely seem scary to reach out to people who you don't know for help with a project. Just remember that you're all working for the same company, you're all part of the same team, you're all advancing the goals of the company. And so, it's a good thing that you're reaching out to them for help with your project, and they'll be more than happy to help you along.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, let's talk a little bit about your all's current role. What are you most proud of in your current role? And Gio, why don't we hear from you first?
Yeah, sure. Most proud of is working outside of my comfort zone. So I focused pretty heavily on web development in college, and now I'm doing full stack game dev for my full-time job. So I'm about as unprepared as possible for the work I'm doing, but I'm pretty good at learning on the fly. So I suppose the thing I'm most proud of is having the courage and willingness to try something completely different and having the foundation necessary to ramp up relatively quickly.
Thank you. And Michelle, what about you?
Well, GEM organized a hackathon week recently, and I haven't been in this new grad role for very long, only about 1.5 months. But I'm really, really proud of the hackathon project that my team and I managed to build. So I somehow convinced 2 other engineers, a product manager and a designer, to build what turned out to be an extremely exciting feature for our customers. And the whole company now is pushing me to ship it. So that is now turning into my full-time project. And I'm really proud of it because we called out that socializing has gotten a bit harder since COVID, and I'm a quieter person. And so I managed to convince these people to join me on my mission to build this cool feature. So definitely very excited about that.
That is really exciting, and what a proud moment, especially being able to make an impact so soon after joining. Jane, what about you?
Yeah, I think for me, what I'm most proud of, proving to myself that I could kind of take ownership of the projects that I was given. In the beginning, I guess I had been working on certain small feature work, but I think as time went on, I was able to handle end-to-end projects and kind of be the go-to person for that. It was really daunting at first because people would be coming to me with a bunch of questions and I would be, give me a minute at first. But through time and through practice, you kind of get used to that. And now you can have more and more impact as you get more experience and kind of own more things.
Yeah. Well, on the flip side, we'll stick with you, Jane. What has been maybe one of the most challenging things that you have faced so far?
Yeah, I think on the opposite spectrum, I was facing kind of more and more responsibility that maybe initially I maybe wasn't as confident that I could kind of, I guess, execute. But that was very much a mental barrier I was putting on myself. Overcoming those very uncomfortable feelings was something that took time and process for me. But I definitely had a supportive bunch, both on my team and just kind of other coworkers on separate teams, being able to kind of talk through these feelings. I did have a mentor from one of the orgs we had, not clubs, the company version of a club.
An ERG.
Yeah, an ERG.
Yeah.
I had a mentor, so I would talk to her a lot about these feelings, and all these people definitely helped me overcome these challenges I was facing, and it really gave me more confidence to take on those responsibilities that I was given.
Yeah, that mentorship, or a lot of companies are putting together more and more resources, is some of these are really similar challenges that we all face. And even when just changing companies, even, after we've started our very first position, we can still run into these things. So great skills to learn. And it's amazing to have people like a mentor to go to. Archit, what about you? What has been a challenge that you have faced, and what have you learned from it?
Yeah, I think the main challenge in software engineering, especially for like intern and new grad roles, is just like basically being thrown headfirst into like a code base that like little about. Because like, you might have had like previous internships, previous experiences, but you find out that each company does things like, completely differently. And it can be a challenge to like get accustomed to that and learn how different companies do this. And I'd say that like based on that, like one recommendation that I would have for like people applying this year is like to do build like a very like diverse portfolio of like projects. Whatever chance you get to work on like completely new technologies that you've never don't be afraid about it and like go ahead and try it, because like those skills you build like working on those software engineering projects, they really like help you out when you join a new company, and you're basically doing a similar type of work but only with a much larger code base.
I love that. Anyone else want to share like a challenge? And then we're going to move on to some of the questions from the Q&A.
Yeah, I have a good one.
Yeah.
This is not as relevant to people who are doing internships, but it will happen to people starting new grad, and that is learning how to deal with unexpected change. As an example, this past summer, I was hosting an intern, and I was super excited for it, spent a lot of time, over a month working on the intern project, making sure that it was bulletproof, spec'd out, all ready to go. And then the week before the intern starts, I find out that one of our partner teams built a feature that invalidated half of the intern project. And so, I had to turn around on a dime scramble in order to get something that was, good by the time the interns start, which was A, not something that I had anticipated happening, and B, was a large change to have to deal with. So, just learning how to deal with unexpected stress in general is a useful skill to have, especially when you're working virtually, because it is harder to communicate with people around you, which means that there is a higher chance that communication breakdowns will happen, and that a team that you rely on is going to develop a feature that they just forgot to tell you about. Some wires got crossed somewhere. So just, being able to center yourself, take a deep breath, think, I'll be able to figure this out, and then get to work on something is a super useful skill to have.
Yes. Thank you. No, if there's anything we've learned from the last couple of years, it's change is inevitable, and we're going to have to pivot probably 10 more times before things even out. But let's dive into some of these Q&A questions. We've got some good ones. So Gio, I've got one for you to start off with, but anyone else, feel free to chime in, and we're just going to get through as many of them as we can until we hit some breakout sessions. So Gio, you mentioned that you were not necessarily fully knowledgeable at your role when you were hired for it. What kind of qualities or strategies did you use when you were applying for that position?
Yeah, so I think my position was a little bit unique in that I was also a converted intern, like going into full-time. So the team that I was on during my internship just didn't exist anymore. Like they completed their mission and they were done. So they had to find me a new team. So it was between web development and game development. And so I met with my manager, and he was like, "So what do you want to do?" And I was like, I don't know. I just want to solve fun problems. So he's like, "Okay, game development it is." But I guess to answer your question about like, it's basically like how do you tackle something that you have no or little experience in, right? I guess if you can manage to set expectations early, and then just like if you have the fundamentals, you'll generally be able to ramp up pretty quickly. And then just set expectations early, like communicate with your manager or your interviewer. You'll be like, hey, I know the CS fundamentals. Like if you give me a shot, I can ramp up really quickly on this.
No, I love that. And a couple of the things that I've heard from you all today is, like Archit mentioned, diversifying your project work or your portfolio as much as you can. Like take advantage of all the different projects that you can do, those hackathons, personal projects to really be able to touch as many pieces. So that's another great way. And then like you said, being able to like have a conversation with a recruiter, and reading that job description, seeing what are the pieces that they say are necessary, and then really like highlighting your skills. Let's see. So what, for any of you, what would be the most effective way to contact a recruiter or employer? I know like Michelle, you said that you did some just like emailing out. How did you all kind of connect with recruiters?
Just, yeah, emailing I think is the best way. I think this is a good time to call out. We were talking about events earlier. I didn't go to a single career fair or like networking event with recruiters at all during undergrad, and things turned out okay. I'm very grateful for that. Just because of like communicating virtually, mostly through email, but also some recruiters will share their phone numbers, and LinkedIn in-mail can also sometimes be useful, but other times won't get your response. So it's a kind of a mixed bag. Would recommend just trying everything.
How did you find like what recruiter to email or an email address to use?
Well, some companies will share a generic like jobs at the company name on their jobs page. And then if I had any sort of mutual connection with a recruiter at a company I was interested in, I would sort of leverage that to reach out through LinkedIn InMail, because that'll kind of give you an intro without being so like distant, I guess.
Yeah. Were there, and again, anyone else feel free to jump in as well. Were there any messages that helped get more responses than others, or any kind of tips you would have when like they reach out, what should they say?
The one successful cold email that I sent out, I shared that I can bake a carrot cake, and they responded to that. So just, I guess, sharing aspects of your personality and hobbies could help you stand out. But it's important to be honest about it. I can't actually bake a carrot cake, so it should have said something different. But yeah.
I will say some of those things get me. There is still some funny things that people have put like at the bottom of their resume that I still remember. So that can be a fun connection there. Well, kind of on the other side, how did you guys decide that your company was the right fit for you? And how did you kind of go about figuring out that it was the right fit?
I'll just throw out there that an internship is an excellent opportunity to trial a company and see whether or not you want to work there full time or not. I imagine there's a lot of people who end up returning to work full time after, like me, like others in this call, because they had a great experience, because they got to see the company culture from the inside, that it wasn't just all talk or all marketing, that it actually existed the way it was described to be.
Yeah, I think I remember someone mentioned this earlier, but a lot of times companies have like a short like behavioral phone interview thing. And especially like if it's with your potential manager, I think it's a very good way to kind of figure out if you'd be a good fit for the team and the company.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to add is during my interview at Rippling, I remember I had like 2 or 3 interviewers who had all started out as new grads at Rippling, and they also went ahead and gave me their emails. So I had like a lot of questions to them even during the interview and also like after I got the offer. So that was like a great resource for me. I guess like the 2 things that they said that convinced me the most, like engineers at the company, their roles are like very technical, but they also have a lot of say in like the products they build. And I thought that that was like, you know, a great experience to have where like, you know, you would have a say in what you're building. You know, you weren't just like coding for the sake of coding. So I thought that that was really interesting. And that was one of the things I prioritized.
I love that. I love it. And you know, I like to tell people, think about what's important to you. So I'm sure everyone on this panel had something that was slightly different, important to them when joining a company. So think about that and ask those questions. You know, continuing going and talking to recruiters and talking to engineers, do you have any advice for in-person career fairs? How to really maybe like take advantage of them and like take advantage of the limited time they have in front of each company? I guess another question is, did any of you go to an in-person career fair? I think Jane did. Archit,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. Sorry, I think I blanked a little on the question. Was it just like advice on in-person career fairs?
Yeah, advice on taking advantage of in-person career fairs. They're huge, they're busy, and so any tips you have on how they can be successful in front of recruiters or just like strategizing
Yeah.
in general?
Yeah. One thing I noticed at my career fair was that at a certain booth, there might be several people at the just like from the company representing. So, and I did notice that some were engineers and some were recruiters. So I would try to figure out, like I would try to overhear conversations and see which one is the recruiter and kind of stand in that line. Because I felt like if I was talking to the recruiter, they might have a little bit more power than an engineer would. Because in the end, an engineer is just kind of there to talk about their experience at the company. However, on the off chance that a recruiter can help me, at least I talk to them. I actually remember I talked to this one company and the woman there happened to be the recruiter, and she emailed me after the hey, it was really nice talking to you at the career fair. Like if you're interested, we can give you like a phone screen, fill out your dates here. So that was kind of a lucky, streamlined way of me to talking to a company. I know career fairs can be a hit or miss, but I think sort of maximizing all of your opportunities is the best thing you can do at a career fair.
Yeah, I've also gone to some career fairs, and I think what's important for you personally is to know what you want to get out of the career fair. If you just, want to try to get your resume out to as many people and companies and recruiters as possible, make sure you arrive at the career fair with like 50 copies of your resume, and that you know how to talk about it in case the recruiter, picks up your resume, scans through it and then asks you like, tell me about this project, or I didn't know you did carrot cake baking in your free time. Tell me more about that. If you're just more interested in listening to like stories and try to screen the companies yourselves to see which ones you're more interested in working at, that's when talking to engineers can be more useful. But don't forget to swing by the recruiter to drop off your CV at the end. And finally, depending on how busy the career fair is, some booths can turn into a zoo where it's very hard to get more than 10 seconds of someone's time. But it can be useful for you to swing back to those booths later on when it's perhaps a little less busy and go looking for less trafficked areas of the career fair.
Thank you. And Michelle or Jane, have either of you attended Grace Hopper? No? Okay. But I would anyone here is attending Grace Hopper, really fun opportunity, and continue to approach the career fair like you would a school career fair. Well, I'll open it up to the floor. Anyone want to share any last tips, things they wish they knew, or any advice they want to share with our audience today before we jump into some breakout rooms? We'll go around. Alexander, any last tips or advice that you?
Ooh, pressure. Fun. All right, I think one of the most important skills that you can work on, if you're in a primarily hybrid position or remote position, then it's even more important, is to work on communication. And that's not just, knowing how to talk to people over Zoom, but it's also, not being afraid to reach out for people over text or email if you need help with a problem, and follow up if they don't respond. Not being afraid to communicate honestly about your project progress, even if you're behind schedule. Things like that are critical for building trust with your team, which when you're working virtually is even more important because, people can't check in on you as often. Building an intuition for the right level of detail, depending on the person that you're communicating with. Say if a project you're working on is delayed because of the thorny bug, you would describe it very differently if you were talking with a fellow engineer than you would if you were talking with your manager or a PM on your team. And finally, building an intuition for what other stakeholders you're working with know. It's surprisingly easy, as I've talked about before, for details to slip through the cracks in larger projects if you assume someone else knows something or is taking care of something and they either don't know they have to or assume that you've got it covered. So building up a mental model that way is also really useful.
Thank you. Gio, anything you want to share?
Yeah, definitely +1 to the communication thing that Alexander was saying. Communication is so important, especially now that we're working virtually. Just to keep up the trust with your team and the stakeholders to make sure everyone's happy with the progress that with the project that you're working on. And then kind of unrelated, this is more for like meeting with recruiters. Something that was recommended to me is to send like thank you emails or letters or like a follow-up of some sort. Like not a lot of people do that, and like it's a very simple yet effective way to like leave a better impression on the recruiter.
Okay. And then Archit, Jane, Michelle.
Yeah, I just wanted to call something out before we finish off. I think managing time and sort of taking care of yourself while working remotely is definitely a huge challenge. For example, I'll often work like a huge number of hours one day and then a lot less the next day. I'm still sort of working through this, but some strategies that I found helpful so far are one, to plan something either for myself or socially after a work day to kind of have an end time of when like, okay, laptop is closed, like time to log off for the rest of the day. Two, just going on short like 10-minute walks after finishing a task, whether that's like finishing a commit or something like that, just something that feels like done, just like take a break after that. And then lastly, I've gotten into like cooking recently. It's just a good break from electronics and like a good way to make sure you're eating. That's it, just eating. That's really
it. I love it. All righty.
Kind of just quickly following up with that as well. I definitely felt like remote work did take a toll on my day-to-day, and it was so easy to just go into my computer and do some work because I could. So I would also echo the fact that it's good to have a barrier from work and outside work. And yeah, I think just taking care of yourself is really important.
Yeah, and same goes for while you're in school too. We know y'all are balancing a lot. Take care of yourselves. Archit, any last things before we jump into some breakout rooms?
think everyone covered everything I wanted to say, but yeah, I know recruiting is like a stressful time. So I guess all of you, I think, will be fine. You know, if you're starting this early, and you know, you guys have all the tips, I'm sure you'll be fine. And I wish everyone the best of luck for their new grad and intern positions.
Thank you. Well, everyone, can you all join me in giving a huge round of applause and a thank you to our panelists today? Thank you, Alexander, Gio, Michelle, Archit, and Jane. It's been so great. So many hot tips. We are excited to take these all back. I hope this was all helpful for you. We now have an opportunity for you all to jump into some breakout rooms. All the companies are here with us, and so you can go in and talk to them. Again, we have Okta, Gem, Airbnb, Rippling, Dropbox, and Zwift. So, you know, if you head over to the sessions tab, you can join those rooms now. So feel free to hop in and ask them all of your questions. But thank you everyone so much for joining today. And we'll see you in those breakout rooms. Thank you. And you all are welcome to join those too. I'll just stay up here and dance till everybody heads out.